Okay, guys, I just put my coach hat on because I want to talk to you guys about something. Um, I've had maybe 4 clients reach out to me this week and tell me that they only lost a pound. Are you in this group of the only lost a pound? Or I didn't even lose a pound. I just lost almost a pound. Um, we're going to talk about something called expectations versus preferences. So I learned about this from my marriage therapist. Turns out I really struggle with this too. So I'm like the expert to talk about this because it's a big struggle of mine. But expectations are tricky. We can have them. We all have them. We go into life with a lot of expectations, but what happens when our expectation isn't met? We feel super disappointed. We feel discouraged. When we get discouraged, sometimes it makes it easy to justify different behaviors. Preferences are awesome because you can have a preference, but when a preference isn't met, it was just a preference. It wasn't an expectation. So I'm going to frame this in my marriage. A lot of you guys have heard me share this story. So if you've heard it, just smile and be like, oh, I know what she's going to talk about. For Mother's Day this year, I had an expectation that I was going to get surprised because it's like I'm 40 this year and my husband loves me more than ever. So like now that he loves me more than ever, he's going to like actually put in more effort and surprise me with this awesome Mother's Day gift. And instead, he did the same thing he did every year and he asked me what it was I wanted for Mother's Day on like the morning of Mother's Day. And it was this giant fight. I got super, my feelings were hurt. I got super defensive. I got super bugged. And I couldn't wait to tell my marriage therapist all about it, Grandpa Gary. And so on that following Saturday, I was like, listen to this. Guess what my husband did? He asked me what I wanted for Mother's Day. And Grandpa Gary was like, oh, that's so thoughtful of him to ask you what you wanted. And I'm like, no, don't you understand? If he really loved me, he would have surprised me like all the other legit husbands surprise their wives. Expectations are tricky. So honestly, like it was my fault because I had an expectation. That doesn't feel good. We never want to own something being our own fault. It's easier when we can put it off on somebody else, like my husband. It was his fault that I was discouraged or let down, but really it was because I had an expectation versus a preference. I can have a preference that I would like to be surprised, but if it's just a preference and if I don't get surprised, then it's okay. I can still be happy. An expectation is something that if it doesn't happen, you can't be happy. So we talk a lot about that in therapy because it really helps us to have preferences. In this game that we play in trying to get to our healthy weight, sometimes I like to think of it as a game. And I'm like, hi, honey. I'm like playing the game. I do all the things right on the game board. I make all the right moves. I put all the right things in my mouth. I maybe do the right amount of exercise. I do everything right. And if I have an expectation that that's going to result in 2 pounds lost on the scale and I only lose a pound and a half, I'm instantly disappointed because I just lost the game and that doesn't feel good. If I have a preference of losing 2 pounds and I lose one, it's okay because that was my preference, but I'm okay because I still lost weight and that's still awesome. We're in this for the long run, people. I hate to say this, but you're never going to go back to your old ways. You're never going to go back to your old ways. If you do, you're going to get the body that you had before you started the program. Nobody needs that. Nobody wants that. It's not healthy for you. It's not going to make you happy. So even though we might say things like this in our mind, I've been 100% on program for 4 months. Am I almost done with this yet? You know, you might be almost through your weight loss phase and you might be ready to transition. And that's awesome. To be able to look forward to transition and maintenance is awesome because you're going to have some more things that you haven't been enjoying, like maybe some birthday cake and maybe you're going to have some fruit and you're going to have some other things that you just make yourself that are balanced and good. And you're going to have the occasional treat. But you're never going to go back to the person you used to be and the way you used to eat because that's not a thing. We're training you all along with the habits of health to understand that that's never a place you want to go back to. So why do we talk about expectations versus preferences? Because if we're living a healthy lifestyle, then it could be a preference for you to want to lose 2 pounds per week. But if it doesn't happen, that doesn't mean you're going to quit your healthy lifestyle. This is a lifestyle change. This isn't a diet. You're not going to go find something else because, you've already tried all the other things. They don't work. They don't get you to where you want to be in the long term. And what we try to do is give you the tough love at the beginning and say, hey, you're never going to go back. But guess what? We're going to give you some new tools along the way, like mindset training and Zoom calls and a personal health coach. So when you do have those moments where you're throwing yourself that big pity party, you can call your health coach, and your health coach can be like, hey, here's some tough love. You had an expectation and you need to turn that into a preference. A preference means, I can still be happy. I can still be happy that I lost 0.8 pounds this week, even though I was 100% on plan. Next week, you might lose 1.5 pounds. One person might have an expectation that they're going to lose 20 pounds a month on program, and if they lose 18, they just got disappointed and they're out of the game. Another person might have a preference that they're going to lose 10 and they lose 9 and they stay in the game and they get to their goal weight and they maintain it for life. Who's the real loser? You know what I'm saying? Like let's look at our health. Let's give ourselves some grace, and let's look at your body as something that is serving you, something that is beautiful, something that is trying its best to heal with what you're doing for it. Let's look at this in a long-term perspective. Let's use preferences and not expectations, because expectations are always going to end in disappointment. A preference isn't. So preferences are okay. Expectations are not. And, speaking of expectations and preferences, I have a preference that all of my clients are working all 4 parts of the system. That's my personal preference as your coach, that you would be participating on the Facebook page, that you would be watching Zooms every single week, that you would be opening up a book called The Habits of Health. It's amazing. It's actually going to help your brain understand what it is that your body's trying to do, and it's going to keep you on plan. I have a preference that each one of you guys would coach one person, because when you teach somebody something, you actually learn it and it keeps you accountable. So being a coach is amazing. Even if you're a client and you don't want to grow a huge business, it's really cool to coach one person through the program, because then it's something that is solidified in your brain and your heart and your mind, and it just is going to help you in the long run. So these are my preferences. I'm not going to call them expectations, because then I'd be let down if you guys didn't do that. But it is my preference that you guys work all 4 parts of the program. If you're working the 3 parts that aren't the fuelings, like the community, working with your health coach, and watching Zooms, then it's easy to stay on the 5-in-1. It really is. It just works. So expectations versus preferences, be careful of those, because they're tricky. And if you guys are stuck in that expectation spot, switch it to a preference and see if that doesn't help you to get to your goal.